You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and we're doing a special show today on election integrity. I want to do an update on what we reported before because there's some really important new developments, and they are at gods5stones.com. That's Gods, there's no apostrophe. 5, you spell out Five, and stones, stones.com. Gods5stones.com is our 501c3, and it is a tax-exempt foundation. And the whole purpose of this is we started out with election integrity. We've gone on to other topics, which includes the Act Blue investigation, includes a lot of the child sex trafficking and human trafficking that's going on, spiritual warfare, and the Obama coup d'etat. But today I want to focus on our original set of topics, which is the election integrity. And I'll give you some breaking news, some updates. We're going for additional funding, so you can donate to God's Five Stones, and we greatly appreciate it if you would. We're trying to prepare for what we know is coming next, which is an executive order that's being written in the White House right now that is about to be issued by Donald Trump, and the stage is being set for it. Okay, so for instance, let's just look at a couple of things that have happened recently on the Gateway Pundit right now. And I'm going to put this here in chat so that Chris can pick it up and we can put it on the screen. I want everybody to see this article. It's an important article. So this is an article of Donald Trump on Gateway Pundit reporting October 27th. And Trump is calling on the DOJ to investigate, quote, the biggest scandal in American history when, quote, crooked moron Biden stole the 2020 election. And Trump is going for no mail-in or early voting, yes to voter IDs, etc., and proof of citizenship. So President Trump over the weekend highlighted the 2020 election, of which, quote, we now know everything, in a statement on Truth Social, calling for an investigation and prosecutions by the 2026 midterm elections. Okay, now, this is important because people are saying, what's going on? Below the surface, a lot has been going on. Okay, the President Trump now has investigated thoroughly. Department of Justice have been looking at the state boards of elections databases. They found what I've been working with Peter Ticktin, Ticktin, President Trump's attorney, and with the algorithms in the state board of election databases that permit the creation of millions of false records that can then be given, their own state ID number that's legitimate, hidden in the database and used in mail-in ballot frauds. It's what permits the Democrats to steal elections. And there are just literally millions of false, modified duplicate records in our state databases all across the country. These algorithms, we don't know who put the algorithms in there, but they're inherently criminal because you cannot have a secret code in a state registration database according to the Help America Vote Act. Okay, so Donald Trump is now starting to make a lot of public statements. He's saying the 2020 presidential election being rigged and stolen is a far bigger scandal. Look what happened to our country when a crooked moron became our, quote, president. We now know everything. So Trump called for the Department of Justice to pursue the matter in a fitting manner for the, quote, biggest scandal in American history. And he renewed calls for Republicans to end mail-in balloting, mail-in voting. President Trump announced in August he's going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots and highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which cost 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper. So the full statement in terms of what Trump is saying is that he's setting the ground. He's really saying that we're going to do these things, and he's letting people know, he's telegraphing what's coming. And you're going to see a lot more of this over the next bit of time, because the determination here now is to prepare the public for executive orders, which, when they come down, are going to really recast how we vote altogether. You saw in the White House that it's been announced. I'll give you another couple indications. This is pretty much insider information in terms of understanding what's going on. It's one thing to kind of get the news and get a basic feel for it, but when you know how to put it together, you know what's really happening with it, then you begin to understand that there is a plan here, and there is a plan. It sounds like you're going back to trust the plan and all of that. No, this is Tulsi Gabbard, and I want to get this one up as well, because another one, I want you to see it. Okay, this is just from a couple of days ago, and put it up in the chat as well so Chris can pick it up. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard is saying here that I've got a long list of things we are investigating. We have the best of the best going after this, election integrity being one of them. Okay, the report: Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden, and 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States started using voting systems. The Dominion's voting switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. So, Chris, play a couple minutes of that, and we'll hear her saying it herself in her own words.
I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time, and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
Yeah, this is going to become a major issue now, so that it's no coincidence that Dominion rigging systems was just sold and rebranded as Liberty Vote, as the Department of Justice indicted Smartmatic officials for money laundering and a $1 million bribe. Okay, so now Mike Lindell and others are going to be vindicated. And I think the idea that there was fair elections in 2020 with all the things that we saw, ballots coming in the middle of the night, people not allowed to go in and monitor the counting of the votes, ballots being run through the machines multiple times. We saw it all. But again, it was denied that it was occurring. And so therefore, with the mainstream media covering up for the Democrats stealing the election from President Trump, we have a major scandal, and one that is now being publicized by the Trump administration very seriously. By the way, in the upper left-hand corner, those of you who are watching this on video, you've got a QR code, and that will take you to God's Five Stones directly, where you can begin to look at it. We're going to look at a couple of the papers there to reinforce what we're demonstrating. But number one, the breaking news is that the White House is now going on an offensive to make it clear that we have to have only citizens vote, that we have to have clean the rolls of non-citizens. We've got to actually have re-registrations with voter IDs, because the state databases are corrupted with these algorithms and can easily produce multiple duplicate voters. These schemes are intricate, and they're complicated in their intelligence agency level. We know that China has penetrated and hacked our elections and can change the results. We know that they're vulnerable to the machines being manipulated. And this is, again, we're going to see, starting now, an increasing amount of information coming out on the nature of the rigging that's gone on in the elections and the need to fix it. And the fixes are not going to be easy, and the Democrats are not going to accept them very well. Democrats' heads are going to explode when they really understand what exactly is going on and what decisions President Trump is making in relationship to getting fair elections in 2026. The second point I want to make here is that a number of the states have had very, very active citizen participation and have been working with the federal government behind the scenes. I followed for some time a group in Wisconsin headed by a gentleman named Jefferson Davis, and that group has been vigilant, extremely vigilant, in working with federal government officials who are looking at the voting fraud. What they've determined in Wisconsin is that there are literally millions of these false votes that are in the database. And it was also something that was proven by Andrew Paquette. We're going to look at his work in a minute. So they were going to hold a press conference, and they still will hold a press conference in Wisconsin. But the data has gone directly into the officials in Homeland Security and Department of Justice who are working on the voter integrity rolls. So a number of states are under the microscope for having extremely fraudulent databases, and there will be investigations, criminal investigations and prosecutions coming out of this, especially over the 2020 election. Donald Trump has said from the beginning that he's going to make a big issue of that. Now, what is the executive order going to specify? Number one, it's going to specify that there has to be voter ID. You're going to have to prove who you are. New registrations, proof of citizenship. In other words, a driver's license won't do necessarily, because a driver's license doesn't prove you're a citizen in a state that has motor voter. Okay, and the motor voter in Wisconsin was just a judge just recently ruled that the state has got to go through its database and make sure that only citizens vote. That's a Wisconsin judge that made that decision. I reported on an American Thinker. And of course, the Wisconsin Election Commission has gone to appeal that decision because they're saying, no, they have to let everybody vote. And in some states, which is atrocious, you don't even need identification to register to vote. You can show up the day of the election, register with no identification, and vote. Okay, so these are obvious ways to cheat, and the obvious ways the Democrats have been cheating for a long time. Okay, but Wisconsin, I would say, is in the lead with really presenting their information in a cogent fashion to the federal government, getting it absorbed and made part of the entire narrative that is going to be emerging with this new executive order. Okay, so I want next to turn to God's Five Stone and look at a couple of the papers there, in particular Wisconsin. So if we go to godsfivestones.com, okay, I'm doing it right now. And if you navigate to the top bar where it says election integrity, you pull down the Andrew Paquette papers, and you scroll down there, you're going to see a paper for Wisconsin. There's this preliminary Wisconsin report and analysis of duplicate records. Look at the analysis of duplicate records, the second one, because what he found was that there's an algorithm in the database for Wisconsin, and it has led to a lot of records. When he did a name and phone search, there were over 2.47 million records out of 7.74 that were duplicates. And the duplicates have, based on an original record, the clone, but they have slightly altered information, like a different middle initial, a different address, etc. But he's found a huge number of suspicious records, which include non-citizens. And this type of result and this type of evidence, once Donald Trump saw it, once Peter Titkin understood it, Peter said that he knew for a long time the Democrats have been stealing election. Now he knew how. And how they've been doing it is I'll explain this very simple way that, let's say I'm inside the State Board of Election computer and I'm watching how the votes are coming out. Now, the way you call elections as a political scientist is you go in with a model of how the different precincts typically vote. In other words, this precinct's Democratic or this one's Republican. And so therefore, you know that a candidate that's going to win has to have a strong turnout out of the precincts in which that party is strong. And if the turnout is less than typical to win, you become concerned. So early on, they can say, we need 10,000 more votes for Biden. And then they can stop the counting on election night, not report, continue counting, print up the 10,000 ballots that they need, because they go into the computer and find out the false records that were hidden. That false record asks for a mail-in ballot. Of course, the person running the computer is asking for the mail-in ballot for that false voter that doesn't exist, but as a real state ID. The ballot is printed and voted and counted in the machines, because you have a voter with a legitimate ID requesting a ballot that was printed. That mail-in ballot's going to count without going to see if the person really existed. That's how the cheating is done. So if I'm inside the computer, I can win any election I want to win simply by knowing the trends of the voting and getting enough mail-in ballots for my candidate that I know my candidate will win, because I've created many more than needed to have an absolute majority and win the election. This is how the cheating is done. But the point is that as we see these studies, we see that, in fact, it's all across the country. Now, what Donald Trump has done, he's also hired in the White House, Kurt Olson has been reported to be assembling a lot of this information that has resulted from the investigations and going to start making it public. So the American people are going to start seeing a series of articles talking about how bad our elections have been and how seriously the Democrats have rigged our elections to steal our elections. And then the next executive order will come down, and it will say voter ID, proof of citizenship, no early voting, no general mail-in voting, return to the absentee voting model, which was very tightly controlled, elections reporting on paper with watermarked paper, and elections reporting that night or as soon as they're counted by hand, with the counting open and televised so that it can be watched. These are fundamental changes. The states are not going to necessarily like them. And so therefore, what Donald Trump is doing with putting the National Guard, and ultimately he's capable of putting the military in our cities, is that if the Democrats say we can't make these changes or we're not going to make these changes in time, then Trump can say, well, we're taking over the elections under Article 2's powers as commander-in-chief, or Donald Trump can invoke the Insurrection Act and put the troops in the field and run the election so that they are not cheating elections, which means that the military could run the election in 2026 or supervise the election. The states are in charge, according to the Constitution, of the rules of presidential election, but that does not mean they can do whatever they want. The states have to respect certain fundamental laws at the national level, like HAVA, and HAVA specifically states that one voter can have only one ID, and they can't be a clone of that voter with a separate ID that could vote twice, with the second one not being the real person but a clone, or a modified duplicate. So the elimination of machines and the voting in person on the day of election is going to return us to a more reliable system of knowing that the people voting have a right to vote. And this is coming down the pike with the ability of the president to enforce it in 2026 with military if necessary. The Democrats are being reduced to a position of supporting illegal immigrants voting, illegal immigrants getting Medicare or Medicaid, criminals in the streets, Venezuelan gangs being supported, the border open to sex trafficking and drugs and fentanyl. The country has become a mess. And this combination of socialism and Islam, which is reflected in Mandami, is an indication that the left in the United States has gone the direction of the left in Europe, and they are destroying countries that once had freedom of speech and freedom of elections. This is completely contrary to our entire rule of law. Chris, I want you to come on and make a couple comments in a minute, but I want to make everybody aware that everything we're saying here is happening, and you're going to see greater signs of it, and there will be indictments as well as fair elections in 2026. I predict the Democrats will lose half of the seats that they currently hold in the House and Senate of the United States Congress. I also believe, go ahead, Chris.
They're going to lose a few fights. We can go back to their fight to, let's just say, re-gerrymander certain things.
Yes.
There are a few states that are saying, all right, we're going to take back some seats, but that's an automatic win for Republicans too, because Democrat leadership had already done a lot of gerrymandering. If Republican states wised up and kind of redistricted the proper way instead of these weird looking places just to fix the elections or fix the congressional seating, then Democrats lose out there. So put that together with let's just say cleaner elections, the Democrats are going to be devastated in 2026, Dr. Corsi.
Yeah, I think the Supreme Court's going to say that that districting for congressional races by race, using race as the criteria by which the district is drawn, is unconstitutional. Because again, this is using race to exclude whites, the disadvantage of whites, and that's not, preference is not equal opportunity. Preference is giving special treatment to one race because of a racial characteristic, and that's a clear violation of our constitutional standards that we're all equal, and characteristics such as race is not to be determinative of inequalities that are artificially imposed. And that's what the Democrats want to do. The Democrats lose the ability to gerrymander, to draw these weird-looking districts that include only their voters, so as that they can get the maximum number of Democrats elected. Those tactics, I think, are quickly going to be thrown out prior to the 2026 election. Chris, you've got a map here of the districting.
Yes, this is Illinois. Look at the way they drew these districts up. Even in Chicago, they're drawn weirdly, just to give advantage to the Democrats. You have look at this district here, all the way down to one corner of the state here. Just a little path cutting through this huge district that kind of just goes around this little line here. Why can't you just go by population and geographical area? It's easier to represent those particular areas too. Seriously, what does this portion of Illinois up here near Rockford have to do with this portion in center Illinois? You believe just on an overall integrity standpoint, one representative cannot possibly meet the needs of everybody with such different, well, let's just say, different needs for representation in certain areas.
Well, I think we're faced with a situation where we're realizing now that the Democrats have not played fair for 50 years or more, and they've all they wanted is power, and that the Democratic Party turned communist sometime in the 1950s, or certainly by Lyndon Johnson in 1964 with the Great Society. And now it's gone completely anarchist. And that's why I wrote this book, the truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy, is that what we have right now is anarchy. And that's not sustainable, to use the terms that the Democrats like to use. We can't have Antifa in the streets, Black Lives Matters in the streets, and all the corruption that goes with it. And so the corruption is, I think, part of the real endemic problem of where our politics have gotten with the amount of money that's sloshing around from lobbyists and dark money that comes into the system through money laundering. I mean, it goes on and on. The Democrats have mastered every one of the techniques. Chris?
And I guess I was going to say in New York, there's a major push by Governor Hochul to redistrict as well. We can talk about that. She wants the map to look a lot like it did in 2004, where it was there to protect certain Democrat seats. But things like ballot harvesting, that's what Donald Trump doesn't want to have anymore as well. It's funny because at a certain level, some states do allow ballot harvesting, but we can't have it to the point it was back in the 2020 elections. These COVID rules pretty much enabled this takeover by the Democrats, take over the White House, and take over a lot of congressional seats following that.
Right. So you're going to find, again, that what's been below the surface in terms of collecting the data, preparing the cases, is going to quickly come forward so that the national debate is already presumed done. In other words, if Trump comes out under Article 2, powers as commander-in-chief, there's no judge in the country that can reverse his order. He uses the Insurrection Act. Again, he can call out the U.S. military into domestic situations on his own authority. And so therefore, the president has extremely powerful abilities here, constitutionally, to get our elections to be safe and fair. And that's, I think, what Trump is going to do. So I wanted everybody to understand that the whole purpose of this broadcast today is that we are definitely getting a situation where the steps the Democrats have taken to corrupt elections and win elections are now coming to an end. And it's largely because of the work we've done at God's Five Stones, which really showed systematically where the problem is and how the vote stealing is done. And at the heart of it is the mail-in ballot schemes. Then mail-in ballots, which are just sent out willy-nilly. People get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ballots, and they can vote them all because they each have their own ID number. And they may be the same person. Same person could be registered 15, 20 times, but with enough of an alteration that it looks like a unique record, unless you can isolate them and see that how many records share, for instance, the same name, same phone characteristic. You have to do additional work to find these clones, which is why the algorithms are so powerful and so successful. I think you're going to find in Congress that when President Trump comes out with the next executive order, there's going to be an uproar because the Democrats know how badly they've been caught and how badly they're going to lose. And the American people are going to demand these changes because the American people do want free and fair elections. And I think that we're at the verge of having a historic moment in which the President of the United States, on his own authority, can issue an executive order that makes election integrity happen. Chris, your thoughts?
Yes, there are going to be a lot of those changes. I'm going to be interested to see how the Democrats are going to try to fight them tooth and nail. I will say, when these things go through, when we see massive victories for the Republicans in 2026, you might see a lot of Democrats fight by having their foot soldiers from Antifa take it to the streets once again. That's another issue altogether, but the American people want election integrity. That's basically what they want. I still say we should go back to the mechanical voting booths. I mean, what's the point?
Well, I think we
of having
should.
Right.
If we eliminate the machines, we'll eliminate the the machine voting, because machine voting can switch your vote right in the machine.
Yeah, call me a dinosaur, Dr. Corsi. But I remember days. I remember the days when it took maybe a night to count the ballots and figure out who won. By
Right,
the time that rolled around, in a close election, the recounts were done by hand, and
right.
and it still were faster than the 2020 presidential election. Still, and if they're going to whine and say, "Oh, what about people who can't make it to election day?" Well, there are such things called absentee ballots. We have those, and they have to be handed in by a certain time. So all of that's there. There is no excuse for not bringing back election integrity. No excuse for not bringing back those mechanical ballot boxes, in my
Well,
opinion.
I think it's happening, and I think it's going to happen pretty quickly now. I think we don't want to get to November and 2025. We've got 1 year left, and so we're right now on the edge of November. And I think this is probably the month in which a new executive order should be issued. And I think President Trump is now resolute to issue it. There were certain blockages within the department. I continue to point out this Todd Blanche, Blanche, who was one of Trump's lawyers and defending him in the New York state cases between the two presidencies, the two terms, but is really not a mega supporter of Trump, and is blocking a lot of legislation, blocking a lot of indictments, blocking a lot of actions. And so Trump needs to replace Todd Callender. And I've said this, others have said it, and I think Trump is beginning to listen. But the point is, you can't have Antifa and Black Lives Matter determine our elections. You can't have algorithms and cheating determine our elections, because it's just too important. And you can't have non-citizens determining our elections. So all these are steps that are being taken, and we're only in the first year, 4 years of really cleaning up a problem that has been around for going on to 20 years. Right, where more than 500,000 illegal immigrants have been deported from the U.S. already this year, and more are leaving voluntarily. I think we're going to see, by the time the 2026 elections are here, some fundamental changes in the way the government's being run, where Hegseth is announcing 14 were killed, a new largest single attack on narco-terrorist boats in the Pacific waters, coming largely from Venezuela. And I do think that we're going to see a crackdown on fentanyl. U.S. rolls back some Chinese tariffs if Beijing cracks down on export of fentanyl precursor chemicals. So Trump's going to exact some promises on fentanyl in relationship for trade, tariff lessening to China. And I think Trump is really center stage right now, is the most commanding politician in the world, and the one who is really determining the agenda. And I think he's pushing for the right things when he's going for voter integrity that demands proof of citizenship. Chris?
Again, a no-brainer. We should have always had. We should have always had been able to, or should have been forced to provide ID when it comes to voting. Now, I'm in New York. In New York, they don't ask for things like that. I've been at the polls. They don't ask me for my ID. They don't ask anybody in front of me or in back of me for their ID. I believe they're just kind of hoping that nobody would notice. But this is what's happening, and I believe it's going to happen for a little while until, let's just say, more of these places are watched, and the threat of even being prosecuted, if you will, by some of these poll watchers. Let's say these hobbyist poll watchers, or some of them under orders by up top in the state to not take an ID. This will change things. It might not change things immediately, but it'll change things eventually. And
Well,
you'll see elections cleaned up. Yeah.
we start getting some prosecutions of state board of election officials, and they realize it's not just fun and games.
Yes.
This isn't just cute and clever in politics. These are criminal activities.
Right. And I still believe you're going to see states like many areas in states like New York or some other blue states say, hey, don't bother getting the IDs. Nobody's going to tell anybody anything. We have you on the list. Don't worry about it. And that's another issue.
That's going to be tough if the troops
Right.
run the election and they go right through and they eliminate everybody who casts any question about whether or not they're a citizen.
Right.
And they start with the motor voter and get all the motor voters out.
Yes, and again, mechanical voting booths take this whole voter roll algorithm issue out of the equation.
Yeah,
If
when
we
they
bring those
come
back.
to vote, make sure they prove they're a citizen.
Right. That's easy. I remember back in the 90s we talked about this, and there were people on the other side saying, no, it's just like a poll tax. Well, I've solved the problem. Everybody gets a free ID. Done, solved. Nobody pays more. But they still fought it. And we know why.
They fought it because they wanted to cheat. They wanted to steal the election.
The joke was vote early and vote often as well.
Yeah, and vote illegally because it doesn't matter whether you have a right to vote or not, just vote.
The Dinkins election, when he was elected mayor, there were reports of people having 50 people, at least 50 people, having the same PO box as an address on the voter rolls.
Well, this is I think, you're finding that Donald Trump is serious about this, and when he knew that he lost the 2020 election, he's not about to let that one slip by. That's one of the things.
No.
There's several things on his list he's going to get, and that's one. So I'm confident that we're in for a fundamental change in how we vote. And I think it will be about time. And you've heard it here first because we're leading the information. We've been on the inside of this from the beginning. The data that Andrew Paquette developed and our ability to explain it and put it up on the website and get it seen has made all the difference in the world. And so therefore, I think we're now at a point where this again is going to start to turn around. And please support Donald Trump on this. Get on to, whenever he's posting something on X or on Truth Social, support it, reinforce it, spread the word around, and watch carefully so that as you've been pre-briefed, watch all the new information that's going to come out about the voting in 2020 and realize it's setting the stage for 2026. Gods5stones.com, again, G-O-D, no apostrophe in the S, spell out 5, F-I-V-E, stones is plural, gods5stones.com. Your contributions are tax deferred. I mean, they're tax exempt. You can reduce your taxes by giving the contribution. And it's a foundation. We're after election integrity. It isn't pro-Democrat or pro-Republican. It's pro-America. It's pro-honesty. And we're giving you the inside information as we have it. And this update, I think, will be on later. I've been working strongly to get the word out, and every one of the various avenues we can get it out on. And we're doing much more media and much more radio as we approach getting into next year and getting to the midterm elections. This is one we just have to win. This is one we can't afford to lose. Dr. Jerome Corsi has been a special edition on election integrity, updates on behind the scenes, what's going on with President Trump's push to get only citizens voting and election reforms that are meaningful, the elimination of fraud, and the return to citizens voting with proof of citizenship being demanded, and getting the algorithms out of the state databases to eliminate the cheating. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. And please join me in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14. Let's get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for letting all this corruption get into our society. We need to return God to the center of society. And with our devotion to ask for forgiveness, God will hear our prayer and heal our land. It's Dr. Jerome Corsi, CorsiNation.com, doing podcasts every weekday. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow.